Today on the show, we're diving into the world of economic indicators. These are the numbers that tell us how the economy is doing, things like GDP, unemployment rates, and consumer confidence. But what do these indicators really mean? How are they calculated? And how should we interpret them? We'll break it all down for you with the help of some experts to make sense of the numbers that shape our world. He soon was still high over the open plains when Clara heard the sound of hooves crunching through the dust. She froze, her hands still covered in flour, the smell of baking bread filling the tiny cabin. Her little boy Ben ran to the window and peeked out. "Mama, there's a man coming," he whispered. Clara's heart tightened. Strangers didn't ride this way, not unless they wanted something. She wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and opened the wooden door just as the rider came into view. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face worn by wind and years of silence. A shadow of loneliness hung over him, though his eyes, deep and blue, carried a kind of tired sadness. "Afternoon, Mum," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was low, rough and tired. "I was riding past when I smelled bread. Been a while since I smelled home." Clara hesitated, holding the door half open. The sunlight bathed both of them in a warm glow. The man's horse pawed the ground restlessly, dust swirling in the golden light. She looked at the stranger, his clothes torn, his boots dusty, and saw a man who looked like he hadn't spoken to another soul in months. "Still," she said quietly, "please, don't come inside." The cowboy's jaw tightened slightly. He nodded once, not in anger, but in quiet respect. "Didn't mean no harm," he said softly. "Just thought I'd say hello to a voice that didn't echo." He turned his horse slightly, the reins creaking in his hands. Something in the way he moved, slow, careful, as if he carried the weight of guilt, made Clara feel a strange ache in her chest. She'd heard stories about him. The mean cowboy from Dry River, the one who'd lost everything in a gunfight and never spoke of it again. Ben looked up at her, whispering, "Mama." He looked sad. Clara didn't answer. She stood in the doorway, watching the lonely rider turn away under the burning afternoon sun. The wind lifted the scent of her bread into the air, following him as he rode into the open plain, alone, like a ghost chasing warmth he could never have. But deep inside her, something told her this wouldn't be the last time she'd see him. Next morning broke bright and golden over the plains. Clara stood outside, hanging laundry on the line, her little boy Ben chasing a stray chicken near the fence. The scent of dew and wild sage filled the air. The world felt still, too still. From far off, a sharp cry echoed. Clara's heart leapt. It was Ben. She turned just in time to see him near the creek, too close to the ridge where the earth sloped sharply down. "Ben!" she screamed. But before she could run, the sound of hooves thundered in the distance. A rider cut through the sunlight. It was him, the same cowboy she'd turned away yesterday. His horse leapt over the fence, dust rising in golden clouds. With one hand, he leaned low, grabbed Ben just as the boy slipped and pulled him safely onto the saddle. The world seemed to stop. Clara dropped to her knees, tears filling her eyes. The cowboy slowed his horse and gently set Ben down, dusting off his small shoulders. "You okay, little man?" he asked softly. Ben nodded, too stunned to speak. Clara hurried over, her apron flapping in the wind. You saved him," she said breathlessly. The cowboy smiled faintly, tipping his hat. "Didn't do nothing special, ma'am. Just happened to be riding by." But Clara knew better. There was no reason for him to be near her ranch again, not unless his heart had brought him back. For a long moment, they stood under the bright sun, the warm breeze carrying the scent of summer and dust between them. His eyes met hers, not demanding, not proud, just honest. The kind of look that comes from a man who's known too much pain and still chooses to do good. Clara looked away, ashamed of the coldness she'd shown him before. "You'd best come inside," she said quietly. He hesitated. "Thought you didn't want me to." She swallowed, her voice soft but steady. "That was before you saved my boy." The cowboy stepped down from his horse, sunlight glinting off his spurs. For the first time in years, he felt something he'd forgotten, the feeling of belonging. As he followed her toward the little wooden house, the golden light wrapped around them both, like the prairie itself was holding its breath. The cowboy didn't say much after stepping inside. He took off his hat at the door, the sunlight spilling across his weathered face. The small wooden cabin smelled of bread and hope, two things he hadn't known in years. Clara poured him a cup of water, her hands trembling slightly. Ben sat on the floor beside the table, wide-eyed, watching the stranger. "What's your name, mister?" he asked. The cowboy smiled faintly. "Folks used to call me Wade," he said. "Ain't been called that in a while." Outside, the wind moved through the dry grass. The roof creaked, one board loose, and Wade's eyes glanced upward. "You got a few leaks up there," he said quietly. "Storm comes, it'll flood your kitchen." Clara sighed. "I know. Been meaning to fix it, but nails cost more than I got." Without another word, Wade stood, pushed the chair back, and stepped outside. He tied his horse, rolled up his sleeves, and climbed onto the roof. By noon, the sound of hammering filled the air. Clara watched from the doorway as he worked, strong, steady, silent. His movements were slow but sure, the kind of rhythm that only comes from men who build to forget. Sweat glistened on his neck, sunlight turning his skin to bronze. When the roof was done, Wade repaired the broken fence and carried water from the well without being asked. Ben followed him everywhere, eyes full of admiration. "You fix things like my pa used to," the boy said. Wade paused for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe your pa was a better man than me," he muttered softly. Clara heard him, and for the first time, she saw not a stranger, not a cowboy with a past, but a man trying to earn back something he'd lost long ago. As the day ended, she brought out a plate of warm bread. The golden sky bathed the ranch in light. Wade sat on the steps, hat on his knee, and she handed him a piece. "Thank you," she said. He looked at her, a woman strong enough to stand alone, yet kind enough to forgive. "Didn't do it for thanks," he said gently. "Just felt right to help." The wind moved softly between them. For the first time since her husband's death, Clara smiled, not out of politeness, but from something deep inside her heart. And for the first time in years, Wade smiled back. The next morning came quiet and golden, the kind of morning that made the world look new again. Wade was already outside, repairing the corral while the sun rose behind him. Clara watched from the window, her heart heavier than she cared to admit. She wasn't used to having another soul around, and part of her feared how easy it felt. Ben was laughing again, chasing chickens around the yard. For the first time in months, the ranch sounded alive, but peace doesn't last long in the Wild West. By midday, the sound of distant hooves echoed across the valley, slow, steady, and unfriendly. Wade stopped hammering and looked up. 3 riders appeared from beyond the ridge, dust following them like a trail of smoke. Clara stepped outside, her face pale. "It's them," she whispered. "The men my husband owed before he died." Wade's eyes narrowed. "They come often?" "Every few months," she said. "Take what little we have left." Said they'd burn the place next time. The cowboy's jaw tightened. He walked toward his horse, checking the rifle strapped to the saddle. "Not today, ma'am." The riders stopped near the fence. Their leader, a tall man with a black hat and a cruel grin, spat into the dirt. "Well, if it ain't the widow woman. Heard you found yourself a new ranch hand." Wade didn't speak. He stood between the men and the cabin, sunlight glinting off his spurs. "This here land's still owed to us," the man sneered. "You can pay or you can leave." Wade's voice was calm, but it carried weight. "You'll get neither. You'll turn around and ride out before the sun moves an inch." The leader laughed. "You threatening me, stranger?" "No," Wade said. "Just telling you what's fair." Before another word was spoken, one of the riders reached for his pistol. Wade moved faster. One clean motion, his rifle cocked, barrel gleaming in the sun. The sound froze the air. Ben stood behind the door, watching with wide eyes as his mother whispered a prayer. The men looked at Wade, steady, fearless, not angry, but ready. Something in his eyes made them hesitate. They muttered curses, turned their horses and rode off, leaving only dust and silence behind. Wade lowered his rifle slowly, his breath steady. Clara came forward, voice trembling. They could have killed you. He looked at her, sunlight warming his weathered face. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried, he said softly. But I don't let bullies touch what's good. For a long moment, she just stared at him, a man once called mean, now standing as the only reason her home still stood. Ben ran out and hugged his leg tightly. "You're our cowboy now," he said with a smile. Wade knelt, his voice low but kind. "Guess maybe I am, little man." The sun hung bright above them, and for the first time Clara felt safe.